Welcome to Drinks Coach. Have you missed me? First one after Christmas. I know it's been a bit of a delay, but we got through so many wines. Went away to stay with the in-laws. Had to wait for some samples to come in so we could do more of these shows. Continuing, no theme in particular. You're watching The Drinks Coach on YouTube. Hit the subscribe, hit the bell for future shows. It'd be lovely to have some more subscribers this year. I had somebody do a site optimization test on my channel, my YouTube channel, to see how well tuned it is to get a bigger reach, and I scored 0%, which is fantastic. It's kind of a goal of mine to have done that. Okay, I want a few more people to follow because then people take me more seriously, but I basically delete as many fake accounts as I accept. You know, if the account doesn't look fake, I don't accept it. So they're real subscribers, the 1,055 that I've got, and I do hope for some more. Maybe I'm going to get some help this year to grow the channel. If you think it's worth growing, please let me know what you think. All lowercase, Drinks Coach UK. If you want to get hold of me on Instagram or Twitter. And all lowercase, Vinesack, to talk to me about things that aren't necessarily involved with Drinks Coach. Could be anything to do with alcohol, anything to do with things in general, really, and Liverpool, possibly. So today we have a few bottles that were kept back before Christmas, and slowly, drip feed wise, the odd bottle would appear and I go, ooh, that might make quite a nice show if we had that. So today's show is, which country makes the best New World, or which country makes the best Southern Hemisphere Cabernet Sauvignon? So what's that rule out? Well, that rules out Europe. It rules out Kazakhstan. Yes, they do make quite good Cabernet there, believe it or not. Rules out Japan. There is Cabernet there. Also, it rules out the Washington State. It rules out Canada. It rules out the Napa Valley, California. Bordeaux, of course, which is really where it all started. But it does leave us with the lion's share of the great new world of wine. If we're going to use the phrase new world in wine in a way that makes any sense, the regions that have enriched our variety and choice and styles of different wines. So we're looking at Chile, we're looking at all the other countries in South America, particularly Argentina, we're looking at South Africa, we're looking at New Zealand, we're looking at Australia. So before we start, rather conspicuous by their absence, there is no New Zealand wine here, but I'll explain the styles. And there isn't any Argentinian Cabernet, which is a real hole actually in this tasting in terms of showing the styles, prices and qualities, and what to expect from these different countries. So this is kind of like an educational one, but also I've been wanting to try these wines for some months in some cases. Could put beef pie in the oven, so these are going to be lovely later. Waste not, want not, and all that. So what do we have here? Well, we have a Cabernet Sauvignon from Maipo, from the brilliant producer Santa Rita, one of my favourite producers, one of the most traditional and long-standing producers in Chile. We have equally long-standing and prestigious, one of the great families of wine, the first family, should we call it, of Australian wine, which is the Hillsmiths at Yalumba. And this is Yalumba Angostura. They were founded right back in the early half of the 19th century. And this is a wine that represents one of the great sort of like meccas of one particular style of Cabernet Sauvignon, which we'll come back to. We have a wine here from the other side of Australia, because as I recently saw on my Facebook timeline, there was a guy saying that if you ask people have they been to Australia and they say no, it showed how many countries you could fit into Australia and how giant Australia is. So it's not fair to think of Australian Cabernet as a style, but to maybe pick out a couple that are real standards. There are also great Cabernets, very pure Cabernets made in the Yarra Valley in Victoria, in the Adelaide Hills. There's a little bit. Where else we'd be looking at? Tasmania's a bit cool even now for that, even with climate change. There are very good, and the original plantings in the Barossa sort of heartland of Nuriutpa, the great Cabernet Sauvignon vineyards of Nuriutpa are old, and Barossa very different, but there is Cabernet Sauvignon in the Barossa Valley. It's been around for a long time. but I've picked a wine from Western Australia in Margaret River. So we've got the two regions that are going to represent Cabernet Sauvignon from Australia today are Coonawarra, South Australia, but down from Adelaide, a good 4 or 5 hours drive down the coast until you get to a place called Penola in the middle of the Coonawarra strip. This one's called the Cigar because the strip of soil on which Coonawarra vines and vineyards are placed is a long, thin, brown patch, what we call terra rossa soil, with an amazing substructure, with water at the right depth, and it's got great drainage and gravel underneath this wonderful clay, and it's one of the absolute great Cabernet terroirs of the world, including, of course, Medoc in Bordeaux. We've also got Margaret River, which climatically is different. It's quite a long way away. I mean, it's many hours plane flight away from Coonawarra, but it's also right on the seaside with the rising Coriolis effect, the rising waters from the south, the cold waters, creating a moderating influence. So quite Bordelais, I would say, is the spectrum of flavours in Margaret River. But certainly the wines I thought, oh my God, that tastes a bit like Bordeaux. They tended to come from Margaret River, although with more sunshine and big ozone holes and everything, you tend to punch 14.5%, which actually in this day and age isn't that high, even for Bordeaux. Bordeaux wines tend to have got a lot riper over the years. So, just to recap, one from Chile, one from Coonawarra, South Australia, let's call it Southeast Australia, one from Western Australia, near Quarram or near Willierdrup, right in the heart centre of the sweet spot of great vineyards in Margaret River, and there are some beautiful wines there. And then a couple of South African wines. Why have we got a couple? Well, if you look back on this channel, you'll see, certainly in the last series, there's definitely programmes which have been dedicated to Cabernet Sauvignon in Stellenbosch, particular in South Africa. Stellenbosch Cabernet Sauvignon is a thing, and the quicker you get on board with it, the better, because they're rapidly getting quite expensive. They're not expensive in the real term. I mean, I say rapidly expensive. They're more expensive than other South African wines, but actually still offering exceptional value for money. And they're wines that will keep quite reliably for 15 to 25 years. Anyway, we've got a wine here which doesn't come from anywhere near Stellenbosch, but in fact from down the coast towards Cape Aguilas, in the colder valleys around the southeast of Walker Bay. If anyone's ever been to the Cape Winelands and gone right down to the bottom of them, it's a good hour to 2 hours drive from Cape Town. It's where all the southern right whales come and pod, and you can see dozens, if not literally 100 podding whales in Walker Bay, which is a beautiful place to go, in a place called Whalehaven. If you go further down the coast, another hour, you get to a place called Sunday Valley or Sondagskloof. And I have featured a couple of wines from my dear friend Willem Pienaar before, the winemaker. This particular estate, beautiful label. You may be familiar with it. There was one on the Cabernet Franc tasting recently, and it's a winery called Hermanuspietersfontein. Yeah, easy for you to say. So Willem Pienaar from Hermanuspietersfontein in Sondagskloof, South Africa, and this one's called Kleinboet. Kleinboet is Afrikaans for little brother, because there is a wine called Arnoldus, which is their top flagship wine, which is a Bordeaux blend. As this is, a Bordeaux blend, so it's majority Cabernet. I didn't have any straight Cabernet left to put into this lineup, but I thought it'd be fun to talk about this nonetheless. As it is the case with the next one, which is from Stellenbosch, used to belong to Mark Radcliffe and Norma Radcliffe, his mother. This is the great Warwick estate, which is one of the great flagship pioneer super wine estates of Stellenbosch, the Simonsberg. And this wine is a Bordeaux blend. It's called Trilogy because it's made from 3 varieties, Cabernet being the most abundant one. But this is 2013 vintage. So this wine is 10 years old. So I thought it'd be quite fun to have a look at that. 2013, a difficult vintage. It was. But it'd be nice to see a wine at bottle age. They had heat spikes and all sorts of weird times in 13. 2012 was stunning, I think, but 13 maybe less so. But I think that this wine, with its pedigree and the quality of the vineyards and the fact it's been in the bottle for 10 years, will give us other pleasures not associated necessarily with the vintage. Okay, there we go. So are we ready? Which, and it's kind of like clickbait, isn't it? I put which and best and things like that in the lineup because I've been told to. But let's have a look at some Cabernet, shall we? So this wine is Cabernario number 8, ungrafted vines, a vineyard that was planted in 1964, making it 60 years old, correct. A 60-year-old vineyard. That's saying something, I suppose. And it's saying it's $12.99 on this bottle at Waitrose. Thank you very much, Caroline Park. Caroline Park invited me to the best night out in the industry I think I've ever had. And it was to go to Boysdale in Canary Wharf, which is a great jazz club, which does great old school food, and smoke cigars. It was the Cigar Smoker of the Year Awards, which was incredible. And Caroline, please, I'd love to be invited back. Tell me what I have to do. That was just the most amazing fun night, and it went on. I met some very interesting people, and some famous people too. Anyway, I think it's supposed to be on the shelf in Waitrose at £15. And at the moment, it's down to a tenner at $9.99. On the back, it says $12.99, so it's actually cheaper than that right now. So get on it. And what do I have to say about this one? Well, it's from the Maipo, which is quite a warm, sort of like sun trap of a valley south of Santiago, but it's also got a top end, Alto Maipo, where it has a very big temperature change from day to night, beautiful sun exposure, great soils, and this vineyard is ungrafted. So when they planted this, they didn't put it on rootstocks, which is the way that we try and stop the vineyards from dying after the bug phylloxera infested the world, because the bug phylloxera loves to eat Vitis vinifera. It loves the taste of Cabernet Sauvignon vines. Get in my belly. This vineyard has been planted without rootstocks, which in theory means the vine will live longer, it will produce for longer, unless it gets infested by phylloxera. But there are certain soils, certainly open, more sandy soils, phylloxera doesn't like. So actually you can have vineyards which sustain themselves without rootstocks to protect the vine. Let's have a go. What vintage are we on? This is 2020. Lovely dark colour. What typifies, if you're going to do a show about Cabernet, let's talk about Cabernet from the ground up. Cabernet Sauvignon is the son of Cabernet Franc, if there's going to be a kind of lineage in heredity in grapes. And it came from France, came from Bordeaux. Cabernet Franc was planted there during the time of Charlemagne, so going back to pre-1000 AD. And the vine mutated into other varieties. And Cabernet Sauvignon, one might argue, was even better than Cabernet Franc, its dad, although, as you know, I've dedicated a show to this recently, and I love Cabernet Franc. Cabernet Franc is much more diverse, I think a little bit more tricky, but more characterful, interesting, more authentic in a weird way. But if you want those great wines that footballers and rich people in China drink, they're going to be glossy, big, blackcurrant, polished wines. And it's the Cabernet Sauvignon that gives most of the longevity to Bordeaux blends. Bordeaux is planted much more Merlot than Cabernet, but Cabernet in the Medoc, where it's king, produces wines which don't show much Cabernet flavour when they're young, but when they get older, the tannins soften a little. You get these incredible sort of cedary, sleek, stony, pure blackcurrant, jam, cassis kind of notes, and it's a really beautiful thing. And Cabernet Sauvignon is always described as tasting and smelling of cassis. Well, it doesn't always smell and taste of cassis. Very few of them do. But let's say the typicity, the typical Cabernet Sauvignon is in there. It's berries, blackberries, mulberries. But you can get red fruited ones too. You can get ones which are a lot more spicy. Well, let's have a look at this. Well, what can I say? It smells Chilean. I know that's a bit of a facile thing to say. But as far as Cabernet Sauvignon goes, Chile is very good because of whatever its combination of different influences are, with this massive cold ocean, the Pacific, along its western side, and this huge hill called Andes on the right-hand side. It's kind of penned in by cold water and cold air drainage from the mountains. So in the centre, during the day, it's lots of sunshine, but at night, there's some refreshment given back because the chilly, cooler air stops the vines from baking. And it produces wines which are not only full of freshness, but tend to be extraordinarily soft and juicy and pliable. And Cabernet Sauvignon works much better in most places if it's blended with certain grapes like Merlot, which are softer and add a textural sort of like, kind of fills in the cracks, if you like. But in Chile, a lot of wines that are labelled Cabernet Sauvignon are beautifully balanced and as a straight Cabernet. And it is one of the places, I think, which produces the best straight up and down Cabernet Sauvignons. And that's the reason why I think it was important to have a Chilean wine here than, let's say, an Argentinian one. Although the wines from Mendoza, dark, rich, powerful, can also have enormous extract, but actually remarkably soft if not loaded with tannin. So here we are with the wine, which is from one of the classic red wine zones of Chile. The nose smells of a tiny bit of new wood. Don't know how much. 10%, a third maybe. Anyway, I can still smell that unmistakable smell of oaks, kind of vanilla, kind of issue. There's also a toffee chocolatey component to it. Oh, it's lovely because I don't know what the ungrafted components given to this wine, but the wine is quite old vine as well. It's 60 years old. It has this lovely taste, which I get in old vine Syrah from Australia, and maybe very old vine wines from France. It's a hint of soy, of beef stock, like sweet meat gravy, like sweet sugars you get from the Maillard reaction. One of the reasons why these wines are so delicious with barbecued steak is to have this similarity of this meaty sweetness, especially when they get a bit older. And this wine is manifesting that very well. Very pure, not mega complex, but it's got a lovely, squishy, black currant wine gum fruit character with this lovely, soft, kind of cosseting tannin, velvety tannin around the outside. But for like $9.99, that's just flipping gorgeous. I think that wine, if you're going to pop into Waitrose this or next week, sorry if you don't get to see the show until later, but do look in, is only $9.99 at the moment. I think that's absolutely fantastic. I think it's worth every penny of the $14.99 it's normally placed at. It says it could be $12.99 on the back. I don't know, but I can give you Caroline Park's phone number if you like. No, I won't. Caroline, thank you very much for supplying this. What a great place to start. Less than a tenner. Wizard red, lovely, delicious wine, lovely and soft. Let's move that out of the way because these are big bottles. Okay, we're now taking a bit of a leap up the price ladder, and we're going from £10 to 25, 30. Australian wines rightfully have become more expensive over time, but God, I didn't see how expensive they would get. But of course, if we're competing with our terrible economy, if we're competing against rich countries like China with much stronger currencies, we're going to lose out in a fight like that. So wines are going up in price. I'll give you an example of the great Cabernet Sauvignon of Australia. One of the great ones is called Bin 707 from John Riddick. Sorry, Bin 707 from Penfolds. A wine also owned by the same business is Wynn's Coonawarra, John Riddick. They're both Coonawarra Cabernet Sauvignons, as this is. I bought the 1990 before discount for $14.99 a bottle, and the current release, 2018, I think is around £350. That's 60 times more expensive. I didn't expect that. I don't suppose anyone does, but at the same time, I'm all about drinking the stuff and not necessarily speculating on it. But Australian wine does have a very strong secondary market now, especially if you pick the right wines. Yalumba, headed up by a guy that when I first met in Griffiths, judging a wine competition in Griffiths, lovely bloke called Kevin Glastonbury, who's now senior red winemaker, certainly, if not, I think he's in charge of the whole thing now, is making the most beautiful red wines. And he always had a kind of rye, spicy elegance to his wines. Yalumba, I think, have always been, well, not always, but if I think back over the years, back to the 80s when I first tried the wines from Yalumba, when I was barely old enough to drink. Probably wasn't old enough to drink when I first tried them. You're looking at wines which are aged in new oak, American oak. There was a wine that came out called Octavius, which was so tannic. Oh, I thought I'd never ever come round. I'd love to know what 1988 Octavius tastes like now, but it was just a plank of wood. We've come so far since then. I tried a bottle of Yalumba Signature, their top Cabernet Shiraz. It's a £40 wine. Had it on Christmas Day after the wines that I said I'd drink from the email that I put out, and the wine was just stunning. It was so well balanced. Anyway, here we are in Coonawarra. Other names you might be familiar with from Coonawarra, you've got Wynn's Coonawarra. There's a $10.99 one, I think. Is it $10.99? A Wynn's Coonawarra Shiraz currently being sold in Majestic. Fantastic wine if you buy it in the Mix 6. There's the Steddings Cabernet, which is about £16. Fantastic. That used to be a £5. And then there was a Wynns Coonawarra Black Label, which also used to be £5.99, but now we're looking at about £30 for Wynns Coonawarra Black Label. And then John Riddoch, the red label's the one above that. But they're all not wines that people who have followed Australian wine over the last 20 years will be familiar with, because they've been superstars and consistently so, made by the wonderful Sue Hodder. Of course, I've never met Sue Hodder, but I did meet her predecessor, Peter Douglas, who was also a great winemaker. I'm showing my age now, but Sue Hodder is a genius, just by way of the way her wines taste. There's just nothing you can say against that. But also, there's a wine that was called the Menzies Cabernet Sauvignon, made by Yalumba. I don't know if we were supposed to pronounce it the Mingus, but Menzies as a Scottish name is pronounced Mingus. It won the Jimmy Watson Trophy back in the 90s, 1992 is my guess. And a wine that $7.99 was told won the award for best one-year-old dry red in the whole country. And then excitement started. But the Menzies is now a wine that costs quite a lot of money. This is a wine which I assume has come kind of either a different expression or maybe a special selection thereof of that vineyard, the Mingus vineyard. But this is 30 quid in Majestic. I think it's down to 24 quid at the moment. Special deal, I think, at the moment. But anyway, very excited about this. 2019 Coonawarra. What's so special about Coonawarra? Well, I explained, it's from Australia. It was kind of identified as one of the first, if not the first, really beautiful cool climate or coolish climate strip of land that was capable of making really profound, pure Cabernet Sauvignon, often with a slightly minty eucalyptus little twist, because there's a lot of gum trees around there, but not always. But that is a signature, and people try and get away from that because they think it spoils the wine. Well, if the trees are there, it's a part of the natural way of things. So generally speaking, I haven't got a problem with it as long as it doesn't subsume the wine. Dark in colour. See, I could be anywhere in the world, in any state, I think, more or less, tasting this wine, and I'd know this was a Coonawarra Cabernet Sauvignon. It just has a smell, has a dry herb, dry thyme and cassis aroma on the nose, and almost like dried blackcurrants. There's a wonderful desiccation to it. I think 19 was quite a warm vintage. It feels like it was a warm vintage anyway. Oh, Kevin, man. Bottle selector. What a wine. Whoa. Once it's in the mouth and it starts to dissolve over the tongue, the freshness comes out. And anything that seems a bit spiky, it's just been opened, by the way, so it'd probably be much better after an hour in the decanter. It has this wonderful, pure, violety cassis afterflow. And this is Cabernet Sauvignon Australia like 1.0. This is what I learnt is how Cabernet Sauvignon tastes like in Australia. But of course, I'm going back 40 years. But what's great is the terroir showed then and it does now. It's a very characterful piece of soil, making very characterful wines, which are just astonishing, with just a fantastic ribeye steak. Enough said. I'm going to have it with the beef and Guinness pie tonight. Lovely, tingling, long finish. And this is £30, a little bit less at the moment if you go to Majestic, if you buy 6 bottles. But it's just, this is what £30 buys you. If you give me £30 to spend on a bottle of champagne, I might be able to find a nice bottle. If I'm lucky, I would have picked the Waitrose Blanc de Noir this Christmas, which is quite delicious. But other than that, I think that money would have been way better spent on a bottle like this, especially in the cold weather we've been having. We're in the end of a long week cold snap, and I cannot wait to have that with the right kind of grub. And if there's any, if the pie's left has run out and you've got wine left, strongly recommend you have it with like a dry cheese like Jarlsberg or Wensleydale, so those some mild and nuttier cheeses, because it really helps lift the wine. Okay, right, moving on. Next Australian wine. So we've gone from Australia, Adelaide, and then you go down towards Mount Gambier before you go into Victoria. This is the way you're looking at it. Or you can go to Western Australia, which is up here, Perth around here, right? And below Perth, 2 hours drive south, you're in Margaret River. I'm sorry about that. Oh dear, I must stop doing that. I was just trying to think of the name of a guy. There was a guy that I was good friends with, Rob Bowen, who used to be the winemaker at Capel Vale, which was a wonderful estate. He used to make beautiful, silky, luscious Shiraz. I remember Capel Vale Shiraz, 1988. He then moved on to become, he was at Plantagenet for a while. So about 15 years after that, he became head winemaker for Constellation, for the largest wine company in the world, in their operations in Western Australia, looking after Hortons, which is one of the most famous and most celebrated names in Australian wine. And I think he went on to work for these guys very briefly, or to help with them. Not sure, but now he's making his own wines. And Rob Bowen's Chardonnay is to die for. Shout out to you, mate. But shouting out, more importantly, to the actual winemaker at this estate. This is Robert Oatley. I believe Robert Oatley used to be the owner of Rosemount Estate. I didn't know that. I never got a chance to meet him. But Rosemount was one of these estates where we first started buying wine from the UK. And it was from the Hunter Valley, the Upper Hunter. And tiny percentage of the wine in Australia comes from Hunter Valley, but we've heard of the Hunter Valley because that's kind of where the first Chardonnays and stuff came from. Very difficult subtropical zone full of rain and rot, but was capable of making some incredibly characterful wines. He eventually sold it off and set up another company, just picking the best vineyards from around Australia under the brand Robert Oatley, saying, if you're going to have Cabernet, we should get it from there. If you're going to have the Shiraz, you get it from there. And has employed the right people to do the job. And the head winemaker here, in this, the Margaret River Cabernet Finisterre vineyard, you won't be able to see this on the label, but it's Finisterre, Finisterre, which is in sort of like kind of, if Margaret River's like kind of like a peninsula like that, it's up here where Cullens and all sorts of very, very fine wines are made. This is 2018, and it's made by the crazy-haired, highly intellectual, brilliant winemaker, and he's been brilliant. I think he just had the Midas touch since he was a kid. When I first tasted a Cabernet Sauvignon, a Western Australian Cabernet Sauvignon he made, called Gladstone's Cabernet Sauvignon 1991. It was only 12.5% alcohol. It tasted amazing. He's still spreading his pixie dust all over the territories in Western Australia, and this is his top vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon from Robert Oatley's group of wines, and this is from Margaret River. So Margaret River, West Australia, it's the kind of place where you drive 2 hours south of Perth. You can probably go out there to spend some time in your holiday home by the beach on the weekends. It has incredible surf. It has very strict rules. There's no like silly bars and trash on the beaches. It's all very, very natural, and it has wild kangaroos, the whole works. And lots of art galleries, and it's kind of like the kind of place you go out to at the weekends. But I actually understand that it has quite a high crime rate because there's a lot of very wealthy people down there and not many police. So I imagine the local scallywags find it quite easy pickings, which is a bit of a shame. But there are producers down there, which although it only produces a few % of the wine of the whole of Australia, if you look at what percentage of very fine wine they produce, they're making some of the most glorious Chardonnays in the world. If you ever try the Hightsbury Chardonnay from Vas Felix, a personal favourite made by Virginia, fantastic. You've got Cullens Chardonnay, you've got Lewin Estate Chardonnay. These are world-class drinks. But also it's famous for its Bordeaux and Bordeaux-style wines. Cape Mentel, owned by no one other than Moet Chandon, or Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy Dior. They made Cape Mentel, and they made some beautiful red wines there, beautiful wines. And on the back of that, the winemakers there went to New Zealand to open Cloudy Bay, which is kind of where the international story of New Zealand starts as well. So very, very fine, lots of history. Finisterre, oh my God, look at the colour. This is black. It's black red, that is. Goodness gracious, that's easily the darkest one of the three. 14%. No flies on this wine. That's 14% too. First one. 14%. See a theme building here. Okay. What else do we need to talk about Cabernet with? Oh, yes. This is Cabernet Sauvignon on the label, this first one that we had. But it's 85% Cabernet. It's got 15% Syrah in it. There is a bit of Syrah in Maipo, and they added it to really make the Cabernet taste more like Cabernet, which is weird, isn't it? But that happens a lot because Chile really relies on its wines being single varieties. They're not very good at selling blends, so not to the Americans. So it says Cabernet Sauvignon on the label. The law allows them to have 15% of another variety. In fact, in America, they're allowed 25% of another variety. But there you go. It's not straight Cabernet, although it does taste like one. Pretty sure that the Cigar Coonawarra is going to be 100% Cab, or maybe 4% or something else. Right. Well, I definitely wish I'd opened this and put it in the decanter first. Not saying it's closed, but it's closed. It's not closed. It's already full of delicious flavours, but I can see there's a whole heap of shit that's going to come out, which is just a mere murmur under the surface. It's just boiling under the surface at the moment. But this wine has lovely smells of tobacco, pouch tobacco, not cigar tobacco. I think there's a difference. Slightly tarrier character. Lovely smell of red fruits as well as black fruits, some mulberries in there. Grand, very open, very big, super ripe, not jammy. Right on the limit of ripe. This smells actually like a cooler climate, super premium Napa cab, and at 25 quid, it competes with that wine competes with $150 American wines. No kidding, seriously. Beautiful fruit tannins. The tannins of like snake around your tongue and your gums. So grip the mouth without it being tough. It's velvety. It's like it's stroking. It's like there's a little caterpillar running around inside your mouth. Yeah, thumbs up, 100%. That was fantastic. I think it's about 24 quid. I think maybe up as much as £30. I've noticed there are a few people. There's a place called London's End Wine Merchants that's currently selling this. It was sold at the Great and Illustrious Wine Society, but I think they've run out now, where it was a good 5-6 quid cheaper, but there we go. Hey, you snooze, you lose, babes. Anyway, so there we go. We've now done two very different Australian Cabernets. Let's let's recap why they're different. The Coonawarra one had a drier, firmer, like more South Australian, more continental. It's not really continental, but more savoury, dry palate, dry texture, which when you taste it melts in the mouth. It starts off as firm and then it kind of ameliorates. The Margaret River starts off as silky as hell and just gets silkier. And what happens is it goes from being polished and silky and a little bit kind of murmury, and then all these wonderful herbal spice aromas come through, and you get Jamaican allspice, rolling tobacco, almost saying of banana. I don't know where it comes from, but it reminds me of expensive old Rioja. Very nice wines. Finisterre Cabernet from Oatley, the Cabernario number 8, numero 8 from Chile, and the Cigar. So what we've got left, we have 2 South African wines left. These have been sitting in my rack for some time. This one, hey Willem. Willem very kindly sent me a couple of bottles of this a few years ago, and I opened them at the moment they arrived, and I think I might have opened them a bit too early because he seemed very excited about them, wanted to know what I thought. From South Africa, 2017 was this glorious vintage. I think it's turned out to be a great vintage. 19 also produces wines with Cabernet Sauvignon, which I rather like. They're quite Bordeaux structured and sinewy, which I think suits the style and suits Bordeaux blends as well. 2021, jury's out there, but when I tasted 2021's last year in South Africa, I think it's one of the greatest Cabernet vintages of all time. But a lot of people just saying, didn't like it, bro. It was a bit difficult. It was a tricky vintage. And when I'm tasting the wines, all I see are wines that are immortal, that will keep forever. And there was one wine, Mornay, you know who you are, at Delagraph in Siemensburg, at the very wealthy hotel owned by the Diamond family, the Graf family, where he let me taste a Cabernet Sauvignon. The group of us taste, the judges, a Cabernet Sauvignon, which, fact, is the best Cabernet Sauvignon, young Cabernet Sauvignon I've ever drunk in my life. We're talking Sassicaia 85 kind of levels. It will be sold at 6,000 Rand, which is £300, but something has to be, doesn't it? And when I tasted this, I thought, if it's 300 quid and it's the best wine in South Africa, then fine. Okay, I'll put my hands up. The wine was so amazing that I might even think about trying to get a hold of a bottle. Who knows? Anyway, so this is Kleinboet, little brother, little brew. Okay, from Sondagskloof, which is further south, so it's cooler, going away from the equator. It says you should be drunk 7 years or possibly longer. Well, it's already 6 years old. I think this wine's only just coming around. Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, Merlot, Malbec, Cabernet Franc, but it is mostly Cab. So, 2017 was a cool climate. just to finish what I was saying, 2018 was very hot, slightly droughty vintage, but was capable of making really exquisite wines. Some of them were way, way, way better than I expected, partly because they're picked a little bit earlier. And in a style like this, where you're picking 6 or 7 or 4 or 5 different grape varieties and mix them together, that inherently gives you the complexity you're after. But these wines have freshness and concentration too, if they're done properly. Oh, wow. Sure. Doesn't smell like there's much new oak in here. But it does smell very, very French. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Cool, blimey. It smells like a really good 2017 Cahors, which is kind of Malbec. It's quite Malbec-y. Which is virtually the only thing that's... Oh, there is some Malbec in there. But look at the colour. A little bit paler. This wine's not, it was designed to be drunk a little bit quicker, more quickly than the other wines. But of course, it is capable of aging. It is very much more mature than I tasted it 2 years ago. So, South African Cabernet. You're going down the coast. There aren't an awful lot of Cabernets down there, but his mate, Johan Fourie, who's actually making wine in England. He's making sparkling wine in England. Johan Fourie, ex-head winemaker at KWV, now at Benguela Cove, which is a golf course not a million miles away from this guy. His Cabernets and his Cabernet blends are truly delicious. And I think what I'm seeing there is this part of South Africa, this part of the winelands, which is growing quite quickly. It's kind of like the Yarra Valley of Australia. Fashionable, quite near the city, but also elegant and sleek. What I also like about it is the elegance on the palate. This is only 13% alcohol, and it is palpably less thick and sweet and butch than the 3 we've just had. It has a leanness, sleek like a Paul Smith suit. There we go. And the packaging is fantastic. Anyway, yes, that's the wine to be drunk now. Anybody got any Kleinboet 2018 and you're watching this from the winelands in South Africa? Time to drink, bro. Absolutely fantastic. Right, we're left with one wine only. Warwick Trilogy. Winemaker's just changed, I think, if I remember. Well, it's certainly changed since this wine was made. 2013. Finisterre was already up and running. I don't know. Was Mark making this wine then? I don't know. Okay, so. I'm now just starting to see, if I hold this against the white top here, I'm just starting to see a graduation of colour, a patina showing. It's still incredibly young looking, but it's got a hint of brick red, almost verging on kind of very, very, very kind of, I don't want to go any further than blood red, brick red. And then maybe a little bit of garnet. I don't know what garnet is, but it's a word that people seem to describe as something that's a bit more brown than that. There's a tiny bit of tawny port around the edges, but not much. And this is from a vintage which was quite tricky. 14% alcohol again. Oh, goodness me. Well, this wine's had a lot more oak. Curated French oak barrel selections. They literally tasted barrels they wanted to blend and put them together for this wine. So it's not a vineyard selection. It's a selection once the wines have shown of themselves and they pick the best stuff out. And this is the purest expression of Warwick Estate. This is 54% Cabernet Sauvignon and 38% Cab Franc. So it's a lot of Cab, only 8% Merlot. The Simonsberg side, the northern side of Stellenbosch, is full of decomposed granite, which produces wonderful wines. As you go further up to Swartland, Babylon's Kloof, towards Rita Castile, this continues. There's shales and there's decomposed, very old soils, which produce absolutely flipping delicious wines. Okay, so this wine, when it was first made, would have been so oaky. I'm not sure I would have even entertained it, because if this wine is now 10 years old, there is harmony here. Make no mistake. This wine is really stunning, and it's a showpiece wine. I think if you're lucky, you might be able to pick one of these up in a snack for about 30 quid. I imagine it might be more than that. Nose beguiling, sort of intertwined sort of sinew with a bit of bonfire, a bit of smoke, some plums, slight meatiness, like a bit of sizzle on the brie. Dense red fruits, mulberry, plum. But then when you put it in the palate, remarkably dry and savoury and sleek, but delicious nonetheless. So fantastic. Here we are, our little run round the Southern Hemisphere. The jury's out, obviously. But if I was to pick 3 or 4 places in the world which produce truly, truly great Cabernet Sauvignon in the Southern Hemisphere, I would go Alto Maipo, Coonawarra, Margaret River. These guys are new kids on the block. We'd have to see how many more people start planting there. But I really love that wine. But it stands out as being very non-New World, very Southern Hemisphere frontier, much more European in style. And this is kind of a mix of the two. It tastes like it could be a dry Napa cab, actually. Something quite Napa about it. I'm not sure what I'm saying there, but it's not got the purity of Argentinian Cabernet Sauvignon, which has amazing purity of fruit, very fine tannins, and very high altitude. It has some of the lovely Rainbow Nation earthy, funky, almost spicy, earthy, rusty flavours you get from South Africa, and it really wears it well. This needs a nice bit of roadkill, brute, a little bit of a dead, I don't know, dead kudu or something. That would be absolutely fantastic. Anyway, that's 40 minutes of drivel. I hope you enjoyed this one. It took me a long time. I'm sorry that I'm rabbiting on, but I don't do this for 2 weeks and I forget how to do it. Anyway, yes, Chile, Coonawarra, Margaret River, Walker Bay and South, and Stellenbosch. That's my little beautiful, my super team, my five-a-side Cabernet football team for the Southern Hemisphere. See you next time.